Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 742 for the 6th of March. We're going to start off with some frontline changes that came out after the frontline changes report that I've already published. The first one is over at Marinka in the Donetsk Front. Over at this area here, the Ukrainian mapping deep state UA have updated their map showing the Ukrainians have managed to take back some of these tree lines. So this caused the change over in this area here, and this also allows us to draw one more icon, denoting that the Ukrainians are on the counteroffensive in this northern part of this area here. This is actually somewhat north of Marinka or north of Georgievka, depends on how you look at it. So this is the frontline change over at this Marinka or Georgievka region. And there's also one more frontline change. So one more frontline change is over at Orlivka, over at the Avdiivka Front. So this is mapped by the deep state UA, as you can see. And they say that the Russian forces have expanded their control over in the southern part of Orlivka. So which means that they are really close to going to block the exit route or the escape route for the Ukrainian forces that is currently fighting or defending Tonenke right now. So this is actually a weak spot, and we are definitely going to expect Ukrainians going to stop this advance and try to push the Russian back towards into the Orlivka region. If not, then this is going to be quite a disastrous development for the Ukrainians. But ultimately, the lines are rather stable as compared to the route at the end of the battle of battle of Avdiivka. So we will definitely continue to monitor and see how this progress. So that's all for the frontline changes report. And we're going to move on to the tactical and strategic reporting. Over at this southern front, there is a missile strike being reported at Odessa. This missile strike is very controversial because this came just in a short time after Zelensky had a meeting and some prize presentation with the Greek Minister of Defense. And so this is this strike is actually targeting the crew of this surface drones of the Ukrainian armed forces that has been wreaking havoc on the Black Sea Fleet. And I believe that the award ceremony was actually presenting these awards to this Ukrainian soldiers that is actually deployed in this surface drone unit. So the Russians claim that the strike was successful. They said that the facility is destroyed. I'm not sure if the manpower that was awarded these medals and are affected by this this missile strike. So anyway, we will continue to watch, but I believe that it's not going to likely dent Ukrainians' ability to continue to launch a surface drone attack against the Black Sea Fleet. So as of now, the Black Sea Fleet is very subdued by the Ukrainians, and this aerial denial ability has basically made the Russian fleet basically stuck on the eastern part of the Black Sea. They moving into Sevastopol region is highly risky, and then with the Ukrainians have the capability to actually launch strike all the way to the Crimean Bridge region. This surface drones has advanced tremendously as compared to previously. Previously, the drones can only operate around this area here, and then they managed to extend the range to the western part of the Black Sea, and now they can actually easily go to the Crimean Bridge region, which is quite an amazing engineering feat from the Ukrainians. Over at the Kherson Front, Kreminna region continues to be battled. The Ukrainians continues to have a bridgehead or beachhead over at Kreminna. And there is a geolocation of Russian forces getting hit by FPV drone over at this this is the eastern part of Kreminna. So we will continue to monitor and see how this Kreminna continue to cringe. Over on this on the northern part of the Dnieper River, there is a Iskander strike, and this strike is very spectacular. You can see this like a Dragon Ball Hami heart that shot down and create a huge explosion. So quite a spectacular video. You can check this out in the DPA archive. So anyway, this geolocation shows that the Russian forces continue to have a capability to hit Ukrainian forces. But also another thing is that the Ukrainian forces did indeed continue to position units in the northern part of the Dnipro River. I'm not exactly fully sure, what are the Ukrainian forces over here is anticipating. Are they anticipating a possibility of a Russian, attack back into the northern bank? Or are they, just positioning troops just as a general defensive purposes? Or are they actually gathering for a major offensive into the south? This remains to be seen. So that's all from the Kherson Front. Over at the Zaporizhzhia Front, so this is Zaporizhzhia city, and this is the Zaporizhzhia Front. At the Orlivka sector, which is over here, the Russian forces continue their attack over in this salient, this Orlivka salient, this Orlivka. The Russian forces are still attacking Robotine. It is unclear what is the real situation right here because we only have information from the Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry simply talking about fighting in the area of the settlement of Robotine. And over at the Verbove region, there is serious development. So other than the Russian Defense Ministry talking about the fighting near Robotine and Verbove or Brovovoye according to the Russian spelling, there is a geolocation by Kreminna Caprice of Russian forces attacking at this very location. This actually invalidates the Ukrainian claims that the front line actually is around here, which means that the Russians actually have progressed quite a bit and in fact corroborates the initial Russian mappings. So the Russian mapping is actually more or less correct. And if we zoom in a bit, you can see that the Russian mapping is this is over here. Let me redraw this. This is the Russian mapping, and in fact, this latest geolocation actually even exceeded this, so showing that the Russians have actually expanded control over this area here. So we are definitely looking at the Russians continue to make this push, and Ukraine. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the Ukrainian mapping updated this just yet, but this definitely makes it very awkward for the Ukrainians because if you look at whatever that's remained with the Ukrainian mapping, it currently looks like this. And clearly, we know that this is not possible. This is not a humanly possible position to defend or hold position. So this thing that looks like a high hill is probably going to be not there. It's already under Russian control, or the Ukrainian forces, if they are there, will have to do a withdrawal into more secure lines. If not, then a possible encirclement is going to happen with the Russian forces easily can basically encircle them in multiple directions. So anyway, this is the situation over at the Orlivka sector. Just next to the Orlivka sector, over at the Huaypole sector, there is a Russian attack reported at Merne. This report is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. Probably just a probing attack, nothing to really shout about. So as all the attacks in this area here, so including Melanivka, Chevone, there's Mafopil, towards Huaypole, and now Merne, these are all just one-off attacks. So none of this have actually, become a sustained offensive operation. So we'll definitely continue to monitor and to see what are Russians really brewing over at this front line. Over at the Donetsk Front. So this is Donetsk City and this is the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, there is fighting being reported across this front line. Let me see, can I zoom? Okay, this is a bit big. So over at the Voleda region, there is fighting being reported over here. Probably just fire missions attacking Ukrainian manpower. Over at the Marinka sector, there's a lot more things happening. So Russian forces are attacking Krasnohorivka from the south, attacking towards Georgievka, towards the center. They are attacking in the area of Boyeda. The Ukrainians are counter-attacking. The Ukrainians are also counter-attacking over at Novomikhailivka, with the Russians attacking Novomikhailivka itself. So we need to zoom into the situation over at Novomikhailivka. So over in the Novomikhailivka region, yesterday in my SITREP or conclusions, I mentioned that the Russian forces is likely to hit into the western part of Novomikhailivka and basically create a operational encirclement because the Ukrainian forces will will be impossible to escape Novomikhailivka easily if the Russian forces hold a position in this area here. So this is indeed what we are seeing right now, with the geolocation of Russian forces actually attacking this western part. And this footage is rather spectacular, with the Russian force mechanized units led by a tank started to land troops along the tree lines in the typical new fashion of offensive operations, and then the tank land fire while the Russian infantry drop off all along the way. So this is something that we are seeing. As you can see, the armored vehicle was hit by something, but the Russian tank continued to lead the attack. So according to certain mappings, they already mapped the Russians have taken this entire part. Tentatively, we haven't, because I'm not sure what is the result of this offensive operation. Is this really a firm control? So we'll definitely just make it just a spike over here. Oops, that's a poor drawing. Just a spike over here, and we're going to wait for more information to see whether we have any corroborations of some very firm Russian control over at this area here. But this attack is going to be very, very dangerous for the Ukrainian forces, because from this fishing pond all the way to the front line right now is merely 700 meters. So 700 meters is not really a lot of distance. The Russian forces can easily overtake and basically outrun and overrun this entire area here, and the Ukrainian forces is going to get trapped in this weird shape. It is nothing shape, and then they will have to redraw from the north, because this part will be totally unable to hold, and then or they will be even encircled should the Russians be able to go around the northern part of the fishing pond. So this is going to be very difficult for the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians will have to quickly counterattack and try to plug this hole over here. So we will continue to monitor and see whether the Ukrainians are able to do this. This is actually definitely quite a not a good development for the Ukrainian forces. So over the Bobeda, there is no frontline changes. It's unclear where the Russians are attacking. Most likely it's attacking towards the Georgievka direction, whereas the counterattack probably coming from the south. So this is the situation at Bobeda. And over at the Georgievka region, there is a geolocation of Russian forces over at this area here, which is considered by the Ukrainian mapping. So probably they have already caught wind of these videos and geolocated them very early, which is why they have already considered the territory, probably based on these geolocations. The Russian forces currently have this south and northern part of this eastern side of Georgievka. So they probably can link up in this area here and expand control over in this area. So it's still going to take some time. Georgievka is quite difficult, and there is an interesting industrial zone in the south of it. Not sure if that will prove to be some kind of a fortress for the Ukrainians or not. Ukrainians are counterattacking towards Marinka direction in the northern part of this front line. So we will see how this progress. The Russians have firm control over these areas here. So I doubt the Ukrainians can make much headway. But if they are able to break through, then the Russian forces in this area here is going to get encircled, or at least operationally encircled. So that will be disastrous for the Russian forces. So this attack is not for no reason. I think this is actually a good tactical decision, and we will continue to make to monitor and see how this progress. And the situation at Krasnohorivka continues to be a mystery, because the Ukrainian side still have not acknowledged at all of any Russian presence in this area here. The front line remains to be pretty far away. This is where the Ukrainian mapping continues to map, where the front line is far away from the city itself. However, if you look at Ryba's reporting, the Russian open source intelligence, the Russian forces have already taken 3 streets, and they have already taken the one side of this bridge over the railway leading up to the center part where the industrial zones are. So, and the Russians also say that they have taken this entire southern part of this railway line. So this is actually a huge advance, and it's very hard to imagine the Ukrainian side totally not aware of this and not report about this. This is a little bit unusual, but we will definitely continue to monitor and see whether this is just some fantasy reporting from the Russian side, or if it is just the Ukrainians trying to hide certain information in order not to scare their own troops. Because from my understanding, Ukrainian troops also uses deep state UA's mapping to just understand the general strategic situation. So deep state UA have some kind of responsibility that to the operational environment for the Ukrainian forces. So which is why they cannot just make things up, and they have certain responsibility to delay certain information in order not to spook their own Ukrainian forces. So we move into the Avdiivka Front in the northern part of Donetsk city. So this is Avdiivka city over here, and the front line is now looking like this, further away from the Avdiivka city. So the Russian forces are now somewhat on the offensive, but no, they are being heavily countered by heavy Ukrainian counter attack. So it's also, but I also cannot say that the Russians are on the defensive, because we have reports from the Russian side hitting Novoporovsky, Novoselivska, Persha, and as well as Ocheretine. Let me zoom out a bit. So they are bombing all this. They are conducting a heavy fire missions on this area here, because this is where the Ukrainian drones and artilleries are all operating from, and the Russians itself are conducting offensive operation at Pervomaiske, Nebelsky, Orlivka, as well as Badaichi. However, if you look at the Ukrainian actions, is also very heavy. They are counter-attacking over at Badaichi, at Orlivka, Tonenke, Vodian, and Pervomaiske. So this is a massive counter-attack against the Russian onslaught, and this definitely holds the line. However, the only frontline change, however, still go on the favor of the Russians. Over at the Orlivka region, as per mentioned just now in the frontline changes report, the Russian forces managed to swing south of Orlivka and threatens the retreat route of Tonenke, the Ukrainian forces over at Tonenke. So the retreat route is now towards Umanske, is going to take a longer route if this line or this road get cut off. And this force can also swing northward, cut off the route to Umanske, and that would just leave the Ukrainians stuck with Semenivka as the only way out. So this is still very very tactical and very strategic. I think the battle is like chess between the two sides. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how this whole thing develops. So we will continue to watch and see how this goes. Very, very interesting battle around here. And so at Badaichi itself, there is geolocation of Russian forces bombarding the Ukrainian forces with TOS-1A. So confirming that the Ukrainian forces have positions over the northern part of Badaichi. Clearly, the Russians is not going to be somewhere here when they bombard here with such a thermobaric barrage. So a little dangerous. So clear that the Ukrainians definitely have most of Badaichi. Based on the Russian reporting, say that the Ukrainian counterattack over at Badaichi has been has able to push the Russians over to the eastern part. They say that the Russians still continue to hold eastern part of Badaichi. I have my doubts. Maybe just a few buildings around here in the most eastern part. Most of the settlement is likely still under Ukrainian control. So that's all for the situation over at the Avdiivka region. Also I want to add, Russian reports also say that there is a lot of reinforcement. I think up to 7 brigades strong has arrived over at this front line to strengthen the Ukrainian situation around here. So we are definitely going to see strong Ukrainian actions against the Russian forces over at this front line. We move on to the New-York Front. Over at the New-York Front, we still have Ukrainian attacks over at the New-York Front, this time around over at Pivdene as well as New York. So the target, of course, is Orlivka, but Orlivka is a major city, it's a huge city. I doubt the Ukrainians have what it takes currently to storm such a big city. So we'll definitely wait and see how this progress. And moving on over at the Bakhmut Front. So this is Bakhmut city. over at the southern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the Russian forces are attacking Klishchiivka as well as Andriivka this time round. So every day there's a slight change, but more or less it's still the same thing. There is geolocation of this cluster bomb strike. This is a rather amazing strike. The cluster bombs just bomb in some very beautiful looking, but actually would be terrifying if you're on the ground. Basically landing and exploding across the entire land. And I feel quite depressed for the Ukrainians because the Russians never wanted to use cluster munitions, and they started it, and the Russians started to use it with glee. So yeah, so the infantry here is going to be, anyone out in the open is probably injured or killed by this cluster bomb strike. So but if they're underground, I think they're pretty safe. Over at the northern flank, the Russian forces continue their offensive over the Donetsk region as well as at Ivanivsky. Situation at Ivanivsky continues to be no change. According to the Russian reports, they say that they are now trying to storm into the southwest of Ivanivsky. So far, I don't think they have success just yet. So Ukrainians again exceeded expectations. Despite the settlement seems to be falling, they are able to continue to hold the line beyond what people would expect them to do. So despite the Russians actually have a pretty fast advance over within the Ivanivsky region to capture half of the settlement. So anyway, we'll just wait and see how this progress. And there's no news really over at Berdyanivka. There is some geolocations confirming Ukrainian positions over at this area here. So that's all from the Bakhmut Front. And we move into the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, the Russian forces actually attacked in the area of Chernihiv. We haven't seen an attack at Chernihiv for around 1.5 months already, so this is actually something new. And the Russians are continuing their attack over at Orlivka. And there is video footage of Russian attacks over at Orlivka. This actually caused some frontline change because this attack over at this eastern part of Berdyanivka shows that the Russians actually have made slight progress of changing the front line forward a bit. So, but this is still nowhere close to not very close to where the main settlement is. But there is actually no settlement there. It's just ruins, and there is of course the high ground over at the chalk quarry. So we'll continue to just monitor and see how this goes. This is a very, very difficult landscape for the Russians. The Russians have not been very successful in this region. So that's all for the Siversk Front. There is a attack against Serebrenka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. I'm not exactly sure what is this about. It could be just some kind of shelling. So nothing to really going to worry about. Over at the Kreminna Front, this is Kreminna City. At the Kreminna Front, clashes continue over at the Chernihiv Region. Nothing really to talk about. This is just the usual clash. We don't really see much changes at all in this area here. And that's all from the Kreminna Front. And there's nothing over the Siversk Front, which is here. And we move into the Kupyansk Front. So this is Kupyansk city, and this is the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, the Ukrainians are still attacking Sinkivka. So they're still attacking Sinkivka region. However, Terbaivka, after resting one day, the Russians attack again. So the Russians are attacking at Terbaivka region, not exactly sure where they are heading to. There is a geolocation of airstrike against a bridge over near the Stepovas Novoselivska region. So this actually probably is just trying to make logistic harder for the Ukrainians in this area here. And it also says that the Russians are not predicting that they're going to use this bridge anytime soon, because if the bridge are useful, why would you blow it? So they blow it, so which means that they probably aren't expecting themselves to use the bridge anytime soon. So it's just to make life difficult for the Ukrainians. So that's all from the Kupyansk Front. And over at the border region, there is actually a landslide strike being reported in the Chernihiv region. Over at this region, this place called Staroborovich, Borovichi, Novi Borovichi or Stary Borovichi or north of Kamka. Anyway, we also, all of us don't know where is this place anyway. So it's in the northeastern part of Chernihiv. There is a radar system getting hit by a Lancet suicide drone. And that's about it. So, and that's it. This is the SITREP or summary for the day of 742 for the 6th of March. And thank you for watching. I don't have conclusions this because I do go into details into every single front line. So I think that's enough of concluding. And I'll see you guys in the next update.